right, everybody. We're going to look at a game today that Coach Bella played, and I like this game because of something that's going to happen. I'll kind of give it away a little bit. You guys, when you play a game and your queen dies, what do?
You need to strategize with the other pieces.
Is that actually what you do?
Well, probably you should fortify your position if your queen dies.
You know what I do when I blunder my queen?
What?
I cry and resign.
Mm.
What do you do? Anybody else cry and resign, or is it just me? You cry and resign? Yeah, we cry and resign, right? So, we have this idea that without the queen we can't play, that the queen is the most important piece on the board. And the queen is important, but this game is going to show us that other things matter as well. Coordination of the pieces, piece activity, initiative, attack on the king, okay? So, this is Coach Bella playing online against 2296 player, and we'll see what happens here, okay? So, we start with e4, and we have G6 as a response. This is already a little strange. Usually when we have E4, we play E5 automatically, right? Claim the center, fight for the center. Coach, can you explain what's with G6? What are you doing here?
So I'm playing Pirc or modern defense. I want to fianchetto my bishop to G7 on the long diagonal. And I'm waiting to see if white will take over the center with both pawns or not. So it's a waiting move, but I know where my bishop belongs, on the long diagonal.
Alright, so it's a little bit of a patient opening. It's not saying right away what Coach is going to do. He's letting white kind of make some decisions and he'll respond. So white takes the dual center. So what did Coach say he was going to do? What did he want to do? Petra.
To wait if the other pawn will move the center and then to place bishop on G7.
Alright, what's it called when you put the bishop on one of these squares on G7, or if you put the white bishop on B7, or if you put this bishop or this bishop, if you put them there, what is that called? It has a special name. Anyone know? Vader?
Fianchetto.
Fianchetto, and I don't actually know what that word means, but that's what it's called when you put the bishop there, and that's a good place to put your bishops. Why? Why do people like to put the bishops on these corner squares? John?
Because they get a very long piece of the board just like that, but they're also protected by the pawns. Because they're like, if you think of them like, if you've ever seen in wars, a lot of soldiers that have machine guns, they'll camp in the little things, and because they can see all across
nest,
the land.
A pillbox, a sniper's nest. All right, yeah, that bishop sits in a corner, and this has happened to me. Sometimes I'm playing, and that bishop is so far away, I forget about it.
And
right?
then you just get sniped,
And then you get sniped, and that's devastating. Right. So, Coach Bella told us what his plan was. He's consistent with his plan. He had a plan. He follows it. Bishop G7, and white responds with knight C3. Pretty standard stuff. This next move, I am going to ask for explanation again, though, because if I were playing this, my automatic move in this kind of position would always be D6. I'm just going to go right there. And Coach instead plays C5, which looks a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more game opening. Can you explain this one to us?
So I was trying to trade my side pawn, the C pawn, for the D pawn, and transpose into Sicilian. So we start with one opening. Now I would like to transpose to a different opening. And here white has to decide. Does he gonna take the pawn, he's gonna push the pawn, or he's just gonna sit? So he has three options here. And usually white is wasting time because it's a very unusual move order. So I can always gain a little bit of time on the clock when I play online. So that's another reason why I like to surprise my opponents.
Yeah, so these are 3-minute games, right? And chess is a game of strategy on the board and strategy in the mind. It's psychological as well. And Coach is saying, hey, I know what I want, so I'm going to do a wacky move order, and then my opponent has to waste some time figuring out what in the world I'm doing. Is it safe? Is it not safe, right? Patrick, did you want to add something?
Oh no, I just asked why you guys didn't want 7.
Well, because these are 2,200 rated players, 2,300. These are masters. They have played these moves a million times. Yeah? So it's very comfortable. It's very familiar. When you practice something, you know something, sometimes it's a little bit more automatic. Yeah?
In the beginning, you said that Coach Bella lost his queen. I've played a game of chess against my friends, and I blundered my queen, but I still won.
Nice. Okay, good. It's nice when that happens. Coach Bella's not blundering, though, so that's good. All right, so bishop e3, what's the logic behind this move? Well, you know, white says, I don't really know what you're up to. I'm just going to kind of solidify everything. Here's my bishop. It's protecting my pawn. All right, we move on. Coach Bella takes. And white takes back. And this move makes sense to me because in these kinds of structures, this bishop for black is so strong. And white really, really wants to get rid of it, I think. If coach is willing to trade that bishop, I think this player would be very, very happy. Coach does not want to trade that bishop. So what would you play here? Any suggestions? John, what you got?
So, because we're in the early game, we're looking to develop and protect that bishop at the same time.
Love it.
What I would do here is I would move the G knight to the F square, like the I
Knight
can't see that.
F6. Beautiful. Yeah. So we're developing our knight. We're preparing castling, and we're protecting that bishop.
No, you should move pawn f6 because it's better to lose a pawn than to lose a knight.
Yeah,
well,
but it's
if
still
that knight is
protected by the
taken,
bishop.
it's an equal trade-ish, right? You would lose a knight, they would lose a bishop. Now in this class, for Coach Bella, how much is a bishop worth, my friends? What is
3
the right answer?
1/4 points.
Yeah. So what's actually a little more valuable?
Bishop.
The bishop. So I think Coach would be happy if this guy were to give up his bishop for the knight. And you'll see in this game how valuable the bishops are, and especially the bishop pair, having both of them. Okay, so white continues at f3. It's a very logical move, setting up this nice pawn chain, something like a Zamish structure, I guess, looking at something like that. And Coach Bella continues with knight c6. What is that knight doing? Anybody? Developing and
Attacking the bishop.
attacking the bishop. So developing a little bit of tempo, yeah? White pulls the bishop back, and Coach responds with d6. Interesting move. What's the thought here, Coach?
I was trying to open up the diagonal for my bishop and to control the e5 square here also. And now I was waiting for white to see if he's gonna long castle or he's gonna short castle.
So Coach is still playing a little slow, trying to let white decide what's going to happen, and then he will respond to that. White develops the queen. Probably premature. Seems like knights and bishops should have come out first, but it also gives away immediately the plan. White is basically saying, hey, it's long castle time, right? And that's the plan. So, look, a player like Coach Bella already sees this. Oh, you're going to long castle, so that means the bishop is going to come in, the pawn storm is going to happen, and all these things are coming down the road. What you got, John?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
And it's based on how Stockfish calculates things. Because if you castle king's side, your opponent is going to realize that your king is closer to your rook. And obviously the main goal in the chess is to checkmate the king, right?
Mhm.
Thus, when you do that, it'll draw more attention to your bishop, which, because they're in the same general area. If it says that was an inaccuracy because you failed to castle king side, why wouldn't you castle queen side and start preparing that by developing the bishop all the same? Or is it because Stockfish thinks that it's a worthy sacrifice to let them be more aware of the bishop?
Let's do this, John. Those are great questions. Let's finish the game, and then if you want to come back afterwards, you can talk to us once the lesson's over, okay? Let's go through the game. Those are great questions. Don't worry too much. Don't be reading this board, the analysis here too much. If I could hide it, I would. But let's just go through the game and see what happened, okay? So Coach Bella castles, pretty normal stuff. And just like we predicted, white long castles. Now, what's the situation on the board, guys? What's the situation with the kings? Are they on the same side?
No.
They are on, what do we call it?
Opposite side.
And what do you have to do when the kings are on opposite sides?
Opposite side pawn push.
Pawn storm, right? What does it mean to pawn storm? It means to take these pawns and attack the king. And what are you trying to do? What are you trying to do with these pawns?
Take out other pawns.
Yeah, you're trying to open up lines. You're trying to open up the files for the heavy pieces. The rooks and the queens, you want them to come over, line up, and come in, right? So you're going to use your pawns to open up the king. That's what you're trying to do. Make sense? So that's what we're looking for. So, what you got?
So here I was really happy with this position because usually the white knight from g1 usually is on d4 and black doesn't get to play bishop e6. He has to play bishop d7. So now my both bishops are lined up against the enemy king. Plus the c file is already open for me. I don't have a pawn there. It's a semi-open file and I can double or triple here my heavy pieces. And we're gonna see a lot of action, a lot of things gonna happen on the queen side, especially on the c and b file.
Yeah, and I wanted to actually say this earlier. When white pushed this pawn to f3, you might have seen the computer didn't like it. And I think one reason is because how is this knight back here now?
It's almost trapped.
It's almost trapped, which means this rook is
also almost
totally trapped, right? The rook is out of the game, the knight's mostly out of the game, the bishop isn't great, so that little pawn move was probably a little bit constricting. And you can see white now fighting on his own side for squares, for space. There's nowhere to go. It's hard to do anything. Okay, so we move on. What do you have to do when the kings are on opposite sides?
Pawn storm.
Pawn storm. So what is white doing? Pawn storm. So it makes sense, right? That's what we expected. That's what we were expecting to see. Here come the pawns. And usually, in this kind of a situation, whichever side can land first, can attack first, can make contact with their pawns first, has an advantage. So it looks like white's going to do that. White is a little bit closer, right? Coach Bella's pawns are still back here. They still have a ways to go, but he's got his knight ready to jump in, and his bishop, and the c file's open. All right, what a move. Queen a5. What's happening here, Coach?
So, what the queen is attacking, guys?
The A2 pawn.
How many times we are attacking the a2 pawn?
Two.
2 times. How many times white is defending the a2 pawn?
One.
Okay? Usually, the queen is in between the rooks. You always want to connect the rooks. So that you can use the rooks for, in this case, to attack the king.
A twin tower maneuver.
not appropriate.
So, here I played queen a5, I connected the rooks, and I'm pressuring already the a2 pawn and the white king. King b1, normal move,
Okay.
defending the a2 pawn.
Often, if you're long castling, this is a move you will eventually make. You will move the king over one square to kind of shift it a little bit closer to the side there. So, very standard move. All right, Coach said the c file is open. He wants to claim the c file. And white responds with a very logical move. We said kings on opposite side, we need to pawn storm. Well, here comes the pawn storm. But in this case, it's a blunder.
Yeah, I noticed that move made that sudden divot, and look at the chain, and look at the bar. It's
Right,
mostly black.
but I would
now.
guess that if we didn't have the engine telling us it was a blunder, none of us would notice that, right?
Yeah.
Because it looks like good chess. It looks like normal chess. Kings on opposite sides, pawn storm. The rook is open. Will be open on the h file, ready to come in. The bishop is there. The queen is backing up the bishop. So there's starting to be some pressure here on Coach's position.
So I guess, but why is it saying that there's not a lot of ways that white can win this then?
Well, because do you want to go into the why this is a blunder, or just go on with the game?
So, the problem here is that white can always play knight d5. That is the critical move here for white, knight d5. So if white plays knight d5, can you play knight d5? Instead of h4, so go back one more.
Okay.
So let's say white plays knight d5, then in this case, then knight captures knight, pawn captures, and even if you capture my queen, queen captures queen,
Well,
black's turn to move. Rook captures. In the end, you still have this fork
Oh my gosh,
with the
look at
pawn
that
and
spike.
the bishop and the knight.
Right. So this is still
It's your turn.
that's still happening there.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
So
your turn.
But you can't save them both, right?
Yeah.
You can
No,
only
but-
save one.
so black will lose a piece here. So it's gonna happen in the game. I knew he's gonna do it, so I just let him do it later. It didn't happen right away. It was just one move later. So h4. I knew he's gonna play knight d5, and my knight is not protecting my queen, but I prepared something special. In his mind, ooh, I'm attacking your queen with my queen, and the white knight also is attacking my e7 pawn with check. So let's say black captures the queen. Black queen will capture on d2. Knight captures e7 check. This is called an in-between move. King has to move, and now rook captures on d2. So this was white's plan, and I would not play this. He could also capture the bishop. So let's go back. Here I surprise my opponent, and I sacrifice my queen. So in my mind was I'm gonna capture a knight and I'm gonna capture a bishop and I'm gonna have initiative, attack on his rook with my knight, attack on his king, full control of the black squares, and white pieces are not developed. So let's go through. So knight captures bishop, and now the knight is attacking the rook.
So look at what coach said. Yes, he lost the queen, but he got a couple of pieces in exchange, and these pieces are not really in the game. They're on the board, they look good, but are they doing anything?
No.
So really, what coach has going on here is 2 rooks, 2 bishops, 2 knights versus
A queen.
queen and a rook, yeah? And maybe this bishop a little bit, right? So that's actually pretty good. So the queen, in this case, this is what we're talking about. Look, the queen is not always the only important piece. Other things can play into it as well, right? Okay, so white responds, save the rook, try to maintain that material advantage. He's +3 after all.
Oh, and also protect the king by making queenside castle look more like kingside.
Okay, good. Here comes the knight. What is this knight attacking?
The queen.
The queen. And also this square is a little bit under pressure, yeah? And the knight is protected twice by this. And of course also this square, yeah?
Yeah.
Alright, so white has to respond. Are you gonna let the queen go down or are you gonna save it?
Can also capture it.
You can also capture the bishop, right? Capture the bishop, right? Knight takes, the same threat is still there. And queen to b4. What do you think he was thinking here, coach?
So a lot of players in this kind of positions are very surprised, number one. Number two, in their mind, the game is over. I won. I'm up a queen, I'm winning. I don't need to focus anymore.
I actually need to blow my nose.
I
Actually, I'm
don't-
gonna go to the bathroom.
I don't need to focus anymore. I mean, this position is completely winning.
I can
But
see what
the-
you're about to do.
But because the kings are opposite sides, material doesn't matter. So here we see a big lesson of initiative, unbalanced material, and kings on opposite sides, and the bishop pair. So I was very happy here with my position because I love to attack, and I love to attack the enemy king. I love unbalanced material, and it's my turn to move. And I just wanted to open up these files so I can get to the king with the rooks.
Because what do we have to do when the kings are on opposite sides? What do we have to do?
Pawn storm.
Pawn storm. Has coach done it yet?
Nope.
Not yet, but it has to happen. We need to open up that king, right? As long as those pawns are there, it's really hard to checkmate. So we need to get rid of the pawns. Plus, this a5 comes with tempo. What is the pawn attacking?
The queen.
Yeah, right. So queen has to move. Knight protected by the bishop. There goes the first pawn. Is the king weaker now?
Yeah.
The king is weaker now, right? We're opening up the files. Knight e2, trying to get some pieces into the game, trying to get the knight over here or anywhere to try to come into the defense, help out with protecting the king. And the knight comes back. Now why back? What are we doing now?
What is black's plan, guys? Can the king move anywhere?
No.
Why?
Because of the bishop.
Okay, so if you give a check to the white king, then what's gonna happen? Okay, so what black is threatening?
You see it? Very pretty.
Knight where?
Knight a3.
Knight a3, very good.
Checkmate.
Well,
So now white has to respond to this move. So,
Alright, white's response, c3, blocks the bishop, takes away the threat of mate. And coach plays b5, consistent with the plan. What do you have to do when kings are on opposite sides?
Pawn storm.
Pawn storm. What's protecting the mate right now? Well, the mate's gone, but what is protecting, what's keeping the bishop from entering in? The c3 pawn. What do you have to get rid of? The c3 pawn. Alright, there we go, good. Knight d4. I guess just trying to clog things up, yeah?
he was blocking the long diagonal, he was attacking my bishop with the knight. I was just happy here with my pawn storm so I can open up the file and check the king.
Here it is, b4.
I wanted to open up the b file at any cost, and now the c file opened up, but the c pawn was protecting the knight, and now I'm threatening mate again.
resign.
So it doesn't, let's say he captures my pawn, pawn captures pawn, then knight a3,
And the knight covers that square.
Even my
right?
rook covers that square,
And the
right?
rook covers that square.
So
So guys, when you lose your queen in a game, should you cry and resign?
No.
Nah, you should look and see whether you have some other things instead. Did you get some material return? Do you have initiative? Right? Do you have an attack on the king? The queen's important. We love the queen. But sometimes you can play just as well without her. If you have a plan and you know what you want to do. Okay? What do you think of this game? Alright, very good.
all right, good job, guys. Give yourself a big hand. You guys did a great job. If you have questions, you make it, and you guys can go back to your games.